Today's theme is quality early childhood care and education and good nutrition, the right of every child. I take this opportunity to welcome Madam Anita Karwal, Secretary, School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education, Director, NCERT, Professor Rushikesh Senapati, officials of the ministries, different ministries who are logged in, uh, heads of different autonomous organizations coming under the Ministry of Education, all the teachers, parents, students, and everybody who is logged in different platforms to this very important session. So, as you all know, that Shikshak Parv is being celebrated by under the aegis of Ministry of Education from 5th of September. And today we come to the last day and we discuss here a very important theme, quality early childhood care and good nutrition. So in this session, first of all, I extend a very warm welcome once again. And in this session, we'll be having 4 presentations. So the first presentation will be a brief of the recommendations of NEP, which I shall be doing. And then we will have another session on the relationship between cognition and nutrition, which again I shall be doing. And then it will be followed by a session on implementing early childhood care and education and foundational learning, recommendations of NEP by Professor Vinita Kaur, who is a very well-known name in the field of early childhood care and education. Then we will have another session by Dr. Ramila Soni on ECCE perspectives in NEP 2020, NCERT initiatives and prospects. And it will be followed by a session by a practicing teacher, Shri Motilal Koirala ji, who is a principal of Government Senior Secondary School, who is in South District of Sikkim. And he is going to talk about innovations and efforts in ECCE. So these are the 4 sessions that we will be having today. So just to summarize, and I will very briefly summarize the recommendations of NEP, because both the speakers are going to dwell in detail about the recommendations and its implications. So may I request CI2 to please play the PPT. So early childhood care and education, the foundations of learning has been given a lot of impetus in the new education policy. Next, please. So the policy highlights that 85% of the child's brain develops in the first 6 years, and therefore it is very important that we provide quality early childhood education to every child and for holistic development of the child in an age-appropriate manner. Now, the policy also acknowledges that as of now, we are not able to provide quality preschool, quality early childhood care and education through different provisions that we have, maybe Anganwadis or maybe preschool. So, acknowledging that we are not really providing quality early childhood care and education, the strong recommendations have been made to improvise this. So the policy states that by 2030, it needs to be ensured that every child entering grade 1 are school ready by 2030. So universal access to high quality early childhood care and education across the country in a phased manner is what has been the recommendation. So it talks of, next slide please. So it talks of, next one. It talks of a holistic child development, which is an overall aim of early childhood care and education to attain optimal outcomes in different domains. So it talks of physical and motor domain, cognitive domain, socio-emotional and ethical development, cultural and artistic development, and development of communication, language, early literacy, and numeracy. And it also suggests that it should be done through flexible, multifaceted, multi-level, play-based, activity-based, inquiry-based learning. So, lot of emphasis on age-appropriate manner in which the early childhood education needs to be given. And it says that the curricular and pedagogical uh, framework of early childhood education will be prepared by Ministry of Education, and the implementation will be done by joint ministries. Next, please. So it emphasizes that there is a need for expansion as well as strengthening of early childhood care education and facilities. And considering the diversity in our country, it proposes four different models, that is standalone Anganwadis co-located with primary schools, standalone preschools, and preschools in different primary schools or higher schools. Now, it also acknowledges that the Anganwadis need to be strengthened with high quality infrastructure, play equipment, and well trained Anganwadi workers, teachers, and every Anganwadi will be well ventilated, well designed, child friendly, well constructed buildings, and enriched learning environment. So the policy is very much aware of the existing conditions, and it also suggests what needs to be done to provide quality preschool education. So these four models have been suggested, and it is also saying that there has to be a trained early childhood education, a trained ECCE person in all of these four provisions that have been made for providing early childhood education. And it also emphasizes on the linkage, and it says that the children of the Anganwadi should be taken to primary school in a tour so that they know, they meet the teachers, they meet the children, and they understand. So emphasis on the linkage to the primary education has also been highlighted here. And it also talks that it should be in the school complexes. Next, please. So it says that, and it also suggests that a preparatory class or a Bal Vatika should be started before class 1 to ensure that every child is ready. And it talks of professionalization of high quality educators, and it suggests that the existing Anganwadi workers as well as the new entrants need to be trained in ECCE. So it suggests that for those who have 12th qualification, 6 months diploma should be given to them. Those who are having lower qualification, 1 year diploma should be, 6 month certificate and 1 year diploma should be given to them. And it says that these trainings should be given through online or DTH mode, so that it gives all the flexibility to the Anganwadi workers to improvise their qualification while they are on their job. And it says that the CRCs and should be, so it talks about mentoring, the continuous professional development of the teachers, and mentoring by the CRC for teacher preparation. Next, please. So this is the way forward, and it says that a curricular and pedagogical framework needs to be prepared, and it will be done by NCERT under the aegis of Ministry of Education. And it has suggested that this curricular framework should be done in two parts, one for 0 to 3 years of 3-year age old children, and one for 3 to 8. So it should be done in two parts, and it has to use a lot of indigenous stories, toys, poems. So a lot of age-appropriate pedagogies have been suggested here. Then teacher training and capacity development needs to be done in a big way, because we have a large chunk of existing workers and the new workers that we would require for expansion. So DIETs, SCRTs have to come on board and develop their teacher training and capacity development courses for their state. And so NCERT is doing a readiness package for preparatory class, that is Bal Vatika. There is a need for coordination and convergence among policies and programs. Now, different ministries have been involved here. It is Ministry of Education, Women and Child Development, Health and Family Welfare, and Tribal Affairs. So these four ministries are involved, and it has been suggested that the ashram schools will also have an ECC program. So can we go to the previous slide, please? The previous one. So it talks about that because the four ministries are involved, and as well as and different departments are there. So there needs to be a greater coordination and convergence amongst policies. And as of now, there is no regulatory framework, and therefore the quality of preschool early childhood care education cannot be ensured. So it is suggested that a regulatory framework be developed by every state. Now, so there is a need to take parent community on board for these education programs, because we often hear that the parents say that I mean they don't really understand what are the needs and how the child needs to be educated or needs to be handled during the early years. So there is a need for research, evaluation, and documentation of the policies and provisions. So both longitudinal as well as cross-sectional researches need to be done. And there is a need for strengthening institutional capacities. So all, as we said, that some capacities are there in the MWCD structure, and some are there in the Ministry of Education, like DIET and NCERT. So all these training institutes need to strengthen their capacities, and then different platforms for sharing the innovations, the innovative practices, the good practices. So organizations, conferences, workshops, and seminars should be organized. So this is in nutshell about what the policy has said and what we feel are the recommendations. And so with this, I end, and both my speakers are going to talk in detail about all these policy implications and what needs to be done. So I have just given a gist, and thank you for this presentation. And now we move on to the next presentation, wherein we talk about relationship between nutrition and cognitive.
So Nidhi, can you introduce the second speaker?
Sir, I'll be presenting this one also.
Okay.
The next I'm presenting.
Okay.
So I begin the next presentation, which is on relationship between nutrition and cognitive development. For last 20 days, I think in every session which has been on early childhood care and education, we have been listening that how important this stage is for brain development. So now brain development will happen only when good nutrition is given to the child. So it is a very, very important session, and it is a very important to understand what role nutrition plays in the cognitive development. So when we talk of nutrition, we talk of a life course development. So right from conception, nutrition is very important, where the prenatal growth as well as the maternal nutrition is so very important. And so this is the 9th month of pregnancy. Then at birth, it is then after birth, it is breastfeeding by the mother and the complementary feeding to the child. That is very important in determining what kind of a nutritional status this child is going to have. So to achieve the developmental potential, it is very important that every every nutritional need is taken care of during these first 1,000 days, we call. And then from 5 years to, so then 25 to 60 months, that is 5 years, it is early childhood development. And from birth to early childhood, these years are very, very crucial. And then from 5 to 10.9, that is between early childhood to childhood, it is important that the child should have a quality preschool education program to do well in academics, to have academic performance, and from then child to adolescence um, uh, between 11 to 14.9, and adolescence to adult from 15.9.9. So it is, and the adult for whatever he's going to become, and it is, nutrition is important not only for one generation, but it has its implication for the next generation as well. Next. So, next slide, please. So, we talk about 1,000 days, and what are these 1,000 days? Uh, it starts from conception. So, 270 days of pregnancy, and one first year and second year. So, we are essentially talking from conception to second birthday of the baby, where so it makes 1,000 days, and we say that these 1,000 days are extremely crucial for the growth and for the development of every child. And the focus has to be on maternal health and child survival, growth and neurodevelopment, and it will lay the foundations for health and well-being for the entire life as well as for the next generation. Next slide, please. So we have seen these diagrams before, that the growth of the brain development is extremely fast during the first 5 years, and we heard that 700 synaptic connections per second are being formed. So out of these 5 years, if we see this graph, we know that in the first 2 years or in the first 1,000 days, the growth of brain development is extremely fast, and it goes on till say 5 to 6 years of age. And and it is not only the brain development, the neural development, but all language development, numeracy, social skills, cognitive development, everything is being taken care of. So the graph on the right hand side, I just want to show you a bigger picture of this graph. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry, the previous one. Yeah. So here is what you see. So now this graph shows right from conception and then it shows up to 1 year. It shows in months from conception to 1 year, and then from 1 year to it gives in the years, in the ages. So we see that the maximum growth, the peaking of not only brain but speech, language, hearing is happening in the first 1,000 days. So myelination is happening, synaptogenesis is happening, and you see then it starts decreasing, and it goes on up till 16 years of age. Now, all those who are here listening to this see what is happening after 16 years. It's not much is happening in terms of the growth of the brain, and we are just, whatever has happened in the first say 6-8 years, we are sort of carrying it forward. So these 1,000 days out, so we have been talking about the first 6 years or first 8 years, but out of those first 8 years, it is the first 1,000 days which are extremely important for the child. Next, please. So if we talk about the nutrition, just to give you a context, so there are we divide the nutrients as macronutrients, which is carbohydrate, which is important for it acts as a fuel, and it also gives the fiber, which is very important for digestion. Then we talk of proteins, which have growth and immune functioning and tissue repair. We require for muscle building, the proteins, and then the fats and cholesterols. These are concentrated calories. Next, please. And then there are micronutrients, and the specific functions are they are derived from the vitamins and minerals which we get from fruits and vegetables. They are not made by the body, and so those the diets which do not have fruits and vegetables and animal source food will have poor micronutrients. So it is very important that everybody consumes fruits, vegetables, and some animal source or with plant sources rich in vitamins and minerals, and it not necessarily impacts growth, but then it has its consequences in other forms of development. So talking about, next slide, please. talking about the micronutrients, I'm going to talk about few very important micronutrients which are important for growth and development. So first is iodine. So we know that we have a thyroid hormone which is essential for growth, and so iodine is one of the components which makes thyroxine. So T3, T4 is essential to neurodevelopment, and if there is a severe iodine deficiency, it leads to cretinism, and it is also associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and intellectual disabilities. And as we all know, and so the if you see the RDA, it is 150 mg, and it is 220 in pregnancy, and it increases to 290 during lactation. So it is very, very important. And we all know that the iodine is supplied through fortified salt. So we always have iodized salt is recommended. So by fortification of the salt, it is given. So iodized salt is a powerful prevention measure for providing sufficient amount of iodine to humans. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the next very important micronutrient is iron, and it aids transport of oxygen to the brain, and it is the most common nutritional deficiency globally, and it is very high in India amongst the adolescent and adult women, and it is the primary cause of anemia, and it is necessary for malnutrition. So for brain development, you do require iron. So if there is iron or iodine deficiency, it is associated with poor birth outcomes and physical growth, impaired cognitive and motor development, poorer quantitative and language disabilities, and we know that so iron supplementation is what is being given if there is a deficiency of iron, and delayed clamping of milking of the umbilical cord. So at the time of birth, if the clamping of the umbilical cord is delayed, or if the milking is done, that is you try and press the umbilical cord and take away all the blood which is there. So if umbilical cord milking is done, then it is said to improve the iron status of at-risk infants. And so adult women and adolescent menstruating women, it is 12 mg per 100 grams. And so iron is also very, very important. Now, another area where we have to, which is very, so iodine and iron supplementation is given, and we know that in our government program, it is being given to the pregnant and lactating mother through Anganwadis. So it is very important that these supplements are given to the mothers. Now, another important area that we have to see is breastfeeding. So after the birth, breastfeeding is very, very important, and we know that colostrum, which is being fed the initial milk, is very high in antibodies, and it reduces, it is beneficial for both the mother as well as the baby. For the baby, it reduces ear and respiratory infections, gastrointestinal infections, sudden death, infant death SIDS, it is known as sudden infant death syndrome, asthma, obesity. And for mother, it reduces high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, breast cancer, and ovarian cancer. So it is very, very important for the mother. And so next slide, please. So how important, what kind of implication does the breastfeeding have on adults? So a 30-year follow-up study was done in Brazil in 1982, and they categorized people who had high rates of breastfeeding, that is from 6 months to exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. So it is recommended that there should be exclusive breastfeeding for first 6 months. So high rates of breastfeeding initiation were there, and then they were followed till age 30. And at age 30, Wechsler's intelligence scale was administered to see their education in attainment and annual income. Next slide, please. So I'm just showing one slide. So it was found that the children who were exclusively breastfed from 6 months to 11.9 months, had higher IQs as compared to those who were breastfed for just 1 month or slightly higher. So 6 months and this was adjusted for family income, parent education, household index, skin color, smoking, pregnancy, birth weight, etc. And also, it was found that the children who were exclusively breastfed had better educational status as well as higher income. So it is very important that exclusive breastfeeding should be given to the child up to 6 months of age, and then from 6 months onwards, it needs to be supplemented, and it should go up to say 2 years of age. Now, when we talk of the breastfeeding, it is important that we understand that the alternative to breastfeeding is bottle feeding. And so bottle feeding, either a formula feeding or, feeding cow's milk or buffalo's milk, or the breast milk of the mother is fed through the bottle. So researchers are telling us that the bottle-fed infants have higher birth weight, have higher weights as compared to exclusively breastfed babies. Now, if we try and look the reason for it, we know that the child self-regulates its hunger or satiety. So we have seen that the baby will drink whatever amount of the milk that is required for him to drink, and then he will just leave the bottle. But as a mother, it is a human tendency that we see, and we feel that, oh, only this much is left. So we try and coax the baby and try and force feed whatever is remaining, and we just want the child to finish whatever milk is left. And that is where the seeds of overeating and obesity are sown. So if you tend to eat more than what is required, or overeat, or if you are on the obese side, I think you can partially blame it to the earliest feeding practices which are adopted by your family members. So this is on the lighter side of it. So another research was conducted where two kinds of bottles were given to the mothers. One was an opaque for bottle feeding, one was an opaque bottle, and one was a transparent bottle. And it was observed that mothers who used a transparent bottle were more likely to not be responsive to the child's cues and force feed the baby, whereas the mothers who used an opaque bottle tended to stop whenever the child wanted to stop taking more feed. So it is very important that the child is not forced fed during this time. Next slide. So we have talked about the formula feeding and the breastfeeding. Now, so what is the right time to start giving other food, cereals and other foods? Now, if we look at the traditional Indian wisdom, we have a ceremony, a sanskar called Annaprashan. And it is done only when the child completes 6 months of age, where we start introducing Anna to the baby. Until that time, the baby is not given Anna. So researchers are indicating that 6 months is the right age when you have to start supplementing the diet, and especially because the iron stores which are there in the body of the infant start depleting. So it is very important that that iron needs to be supplemented. So needs to be supplemented, and you have to start giving iron-rich food. So nutrient-rich complementary foods need to be introduced at 6 months of age, and variety of taste and textures are very important. So we often hear that we say that this child is very fussy and doesn't eat. So here again, this is where it starts, whether you introduce all kinds of food to the child or just one kind of food. So what are going to be your food choices will be determined. So it's not just the brain development, your entire eating practices are also determined in the first 1,000 days. So iron-rich food essential are need to be introduced to prevent iron deficiency, and nutrient requirements high in young adults. So there should not be, the baby should never be fed low calorie, non nutrient dense food. So anything which is just calories, say cold drink, say burger or samosa or anything like that, should never be fed to the baby, because he needs or she needs highly nutritive foods. Next one. So whenever there is food insecurity or whenever there is poverty, so what happens is that the quality of the food decreases. So what goes from the diet? First of all, the proteins, the eggs, means the protein sources go away, and then the fruits and vegetables. And we are very familiar with that. We know the rates of fruits and vegetables. So if it comes to, any kind of food insecurity or in the impoverished homes, it is just the cereals or the grains which are eaten. So there is no room or there is no scope for them to buy fruits and vegetables and protein sources. So, and then what increases? The starches, the carbohydrates increase in quantity wherever there is poverty, and the quantity decreases. So whenever there is food insecurity, this is what starts happening, and as a result, we go to the next slide, please. Next slide. So as a result, something called stunting happens. That is, stunting is low for the height, low for the age. So it is a relationship between the age and the height. So if the length of the child is two standard deviation below the median, then we call it stunting. So it is often present at birth and potential marker of long-term undernutrition. So whenever there is undernutrition, then it is likely, the child is likely to be stunted. And the long-term consequences of stunting is that it hampers the lower growth, lower cognition, lower economic productivity, and the stunting goes on to the next generation. So if the mother is stunted, it is very likely that the children will be stunted. So you see here these children in the government school, they should, so you see that line, so they should have gone up to that line, but they are not touching that line, so that means stunting is the issue here. Next slide. So we know that India, Nigeria, and Pakistan together constitute half the world's stunted children. So 46.6 million children in India and are stunted, and 25.5 are wasted. So wasted is a lesser wage for their height. So globally, 150.8 million children under 5 years are stunted, and 50.5 million are wasted. So it is a very big concern for us. And we go to the next slide, please. So stunting by age 2, or stunting in first 1,000 days, is in childhood related to poor school performance, in adulthood low human capital, and in subsequent generations similar growth pattern, offspring benefit from maternal intervention. So if the mother is stunted, it is quite likely that the children will be stunted. So this cycle has to be broken by giving intervention to the mother, and so it is very important that stunting rates have to decrease. Next slide, please. So here we see what is the relationship between poverty, stunting, child development, and school achievement. So if there is poverty, there is nutritional deficiency. We already talked how the quality and the quantity both decreases, and it results in stunting. Or if there is poverty, the primary caretaker is under stress, under depression, low responsivity, low education. As a result, it is poor care and home stimulation, which again leads to poor school achievement, poor cognitive, motor, social, emotional development, and stunting. So you see these arrows, these are all like poor. If the child is having poor cognitive, motor, social, emotional development, he is going to have poor school achievement. If poor care in home and stimulation, he is going to have poor school achievement. So all these have a vicious cycle is there. So all these are related, so nutrition has a very great impact in the school achievement and in the overall health of this generation as well as the next generation. Next slide, please. So we see that a lot of initiatives have been taken by Government of India for improving the nutritional status of children. We know integrated child development services, so it offers 6 packages of services and it takes care of pregnant and lactating women and gives all kind of supplementation to the mothers and the medical care and the testing facility. Then we have special nutrition program. We have midday meal schemes in every school. Then there is another program known as WIFS, that is weekly iron folic acid supplementation. It is done for all adolescent girls as well as for pregnant and lactating women, where iron folic acid supplementation is given. Then deworming could also be a reason for poor nutrition and which is due to poor hygiene. So National Deworming Day is also it is also a program of the government. Then under Ayushman Bharat, school health program is being taken, where Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education together are training a lot of teachers on different aspects of school health, adolescent health. And then there is Poshan Abhiyan or National Nutrition Mission. Next slide, please. So Poshan Abhiyan is, we just had a Poshan month which is going on. So it is intersectoral convergence for better service delivery and technology, use of technology for growth, monitoring and tracking of women. So technology has been used and so mobile phones have been given to Anganwadi workers and they are putting in the data for every child and then whatever interventions are needed are being taken care of. So it is a very, very important scheme of the government. Then health and nutrition services is in an intensified way for the first 1,000 days that we just heard are so very important. And it cannot be done till the community is also on board. So Jan Andolan or the participation of the community is ensured. So thank you so much. That is all for. So now we go on to the next session, which will be with Professor. And before that, I would request Dr. Ramila Soni to take over the sessions on now. And I would like to introduce Dr. Ramila Soni. So Dr. Ramila Soni is working as an associate professor in the Department of Elementary Education. And she has a very wide experience. For over 30 years. She has been working in the area of early childhood care and education. She has been involved in a lot of training, material preparation, and she was instrumental. So in NCERT designed 4 model preschools in all the RIEs, and she is instrumental in designing and developing the model preschools in all the 4 RIEs. She has many publications on different aspects of child development to her credit. She is actively involved in national and international workshops, seminars, where she has presented a lot of research papers and articles, and she has a very wide-ranging experience in the area of early childhood education. Warm welcome to you, Dr. Soni, and request you to take the session on, and I will not be able to be here because of my health conditions. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sanwar. And it was really a very, very informative and enriching and interesting session. As you had presented 2 sessions, one was on NEP, ECE, ECCE in NEP 2020, and food relationship between food, nutrition, and cognitive development. I think everybody got aware of, like how we need to take care of especially in the first few years, like for the quality ECCE, and we cannot ignore good nutrition and good food. And you also discussed about the 5 years of foundational learning as mentioned in NEP 2020, and the play-based approach and activity-based approach and inquiry-based learning. The recommendations for implementation plan you discussed were really noteworthy. And you made everyone aware. I'll again want to say that it was a very, very interesting session, especially the first 1,000 days. का जो कॉन्सेप्ट था वो आपने बहुत ही सरल शब्दों में व्यूअर्स को समझाया, एंड आई होप व्यूअर्स ने इसको बहुत एंजॉय किया होगा. सो वी कैन सी दैट हाउ the first few years are crucial for the good nutrition. Children, the brain needs the good nutrition also, as well as the quality ECCE learning. You have updated, Professor Sanwal, the viewers regarding government initiatives for improving the nutritional status for young children. So that is again one of the very good thing you did. So thank you so much once again, Professor Sanwal, for joining us and giving us a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to introduce Professor Vinita Kaul, the second speaker for the second session. Dr. Vinita Kaul is Professor Emerita, Education, Ambedkar University, Delhi, from where she retired in 2016 as Director of School Education Studies and founder director of Center for Early Childhood Education and Development, popularly known as CSET. Everyone knows about CSET. Prior to this, Professor Kaul was a senior education specialist in the World Bank for over 10 years. She was earlier in NCERT for over 20 years, from where she took early retirement from position of professor and head of Department of Preschool and Elementary Education. Professor Kaul has been a member of several committees of the government, a member of the steering group of Asia Pacific Regional Network for ECD, and an invited member of the International Forum for Investing in the Young Child. She has also served on boards of a number of NGOs working in the area of education and has several national and international publications in early education to her credit. Professor Kaul, I warmly welcome you, and over to you, Professor Kaul. Professor Kaul.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I had
Welcome,
to answer.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Romila, for that kind introduction and for inviting me to be able to participate in this session and to be able to convey my views on this very important subject of early childhood care and education, and bring in the whole. I'm very happy that the holistic perspective has come into the presentations with the presentation on nutrition, so that it's really given a lot of emphasis on holistic development. What I would do is that since I'll just take on from where Professor Suniti Sanwal had kind of ended her initial presentation, where she had talked about certain focal areas for implementation of the recommendations of the NEP for early childhood care and education and for foundational learning. तो उसी से आगे चल करके उन्हीं एस्पेक्ट्स को लेकर के मैं कोशिश करूंगी कि मैं थोड़ा सा उसके बारे में हम सोचें कि क्या उसकी क्या अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं ये करने की, जो कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन जो कि करने की ज़रूरत है, और उसके क्या कुछ चैलेंजेस या चुनौतियां भी हो सकती हैं. इसके लिए वही जो उन्होंने एरियाज आइडेंटिफाई करे थे फॉर इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, क्योंकि पॉलिसी तो आ गई और बहुत अच्छी पॉलिसी आई है, अब आगे इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए क्या क्या करने की ज़रूरत है, जिससे कि जो विजन इसके लिए अर्ली चाइल्डहुड केयर एंड एजुकेशन एंड फाउंडेशनल लर्निंग के लिए क्रिएट हुआ है पॉलिसी में, उसको हम रियलाइज कर सके, उसको हम पा सके. तो उसके लिए कैन यू गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज. जो मेन एरियाज प्रोफेसर सनवाल ने आइडेंटिफाई किए थे अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन में, सात एरियाज हैं, तो उन्हीं पे मैं एक एक लेकर के चर्चा करूंगी. I will try to talk on exactly these aspects and see what are the kind of challenges and opportunities that are there, what needs to be done perhaps broadly to be able to make a success of this, the interventions in this area and be able to realize the vision of the policy. So she had talked about curriculum, pedagogy and readiness package for Bal Vatika, that is for the 5 to 6 year age group. She had talked about teacher training. She had talked about parent community education, strengthening institutional capacity, coordination and convergence, enabling, ensuring or instituting a regulatory framework for quality, and research, documentation and evaluation. तो एक-एक को लेकर के मैं इस पे चर्चा करूंगी. So next one please. But before I do that, इससे पहले कि मैं इन areas पे बात करूं, डॉक्टर सानवाल ने ऑलरेडी दिखाए हैं ये neural development के graphs in which she has emphasized the importance of the earliest years, particularly from sensory development, language development, higher cognitive functions. I would just take on from there just to make one very specific point. The next slide, please. जब हम इनकी बातें करते हैं, इसका करिकुलम के लिए भी इम्प्लीकेशंस है. यही नहीं कि हमको इस एज ग्रुप पे हमें कंसंट्रेट करना है, उनका न्यूट्रिशन, हेल्थ और लर्निंग ठीक होनी चाहिए, लेकिन उनको क्या सीखना है इस एज में, उसकी भी इम्प्लीकेशंस है ये न्यूरो साइंस से. तो इसमें जैसे आप जो देख रहे हैं, ये क्रिटिकल पीरियड्स हैं within the first 6 years of life, first 7 years of life. There are certain critical periods in the development of the brain which actually require for the child a kind of an environment which will promote those particular competencies which are critical for later learning. So if you see, just taking a cue from here, if you see the fourth one, it is on peer social skills. So it is very, very important for children to be able to have experiences in their curriculum or opportunities for social skills to develop. One of the problems, one of the challenges today with the COVID situation is that children are being kept away from schools, from preschools, from any kind of social activity because of the social distancing that is required. और उससे उनके डेवलपमेंट पे क्या असर हो रहा है, इसको समझने और रिसर्च करने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि and how we can alternatively provide opportunities maybe in a smaller scale for children to be able to learn to live with others and play with others and really make friends. So socialization के लिए ये 3 to 6 years का जो period है, that is very, very critical, and therefore one of the major objectives of early childhood curriculum is, or foundational learning curriculum I would say, is socialization. The next one after that, if you see the fifth bar, language development, Professor Sanwar talked about it, but language development more in terms of actually giving a lot of exposure, oral exposure to children, or opportunities for children to develop their oral skills. बच्चों में बोलने की, सुनने की, समझने की जो क्षमता है उसको बढ़ावा देना, जिससे कि language facility is very, very critical. And here, the recommendation of the policy about using the mother tongue or the home language as a medium of instruction is very, very important, right from this age, because that is the time when, that is how, if the child is familiar with the language, अगर वो बच्चा उस भाषा से परिचित होगा, उस भाषा के संग ही बड़ा हो रहा होगा, तो उसके लिए जो भी सिखाया जाएगा वो बहुत आराम से सीख सकेगा, क्योंकि समझ सकेगा. लेकिन अगर भाषा उसके लिए परिचित नहीं होगी तो फिर वो समझ नहीं पाएगा और कोशिश यही करेगा कि मैं इसको रट करके याद कर लूं, तो उससे बच्चे की जो फाउंडेशन है बहुत कमजोर हो सकती है. नेक्स्ट वन इज सिंबल रिकग्निशन. सो सिंबल रेलेवेंस, सिंबल को समझना, किस तरह से सिंबल, जैसे अल्फाबेट है या नंबर्स है, ये सब सिंबल्स हैं, तो उनको समझना कि ये क्या है और किस किस चीज को ये रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, ये भी इसी एज में शुरुआत होती है. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि उनको हम पढ़ाएं लिखाएं, इसका मतलब ये है कि उनको इस तरह के कई सारे ऐसे अनुभव दें जिससे कि बच्चे सिंबॉलिकली सोच सके, सिंबॉलिकली अंडरस्टैंड कर सके और कंपैरिजंस कर सके, रिलेटिव क्वालिटी. तो इसमें the important thing what I want to say is that by bringing early childhood education along with school education, the idea is not to bring down the school curriculum into the early childhood, but have certain experiences and opportunities through play by which children will be able to develop these critical competencies, which are so critical not only for school learning but also for lifelong learning. Next, please. And what is very important is, one is what should children be able to learn, and the other is how they should be able to learn. And neuroscience, as well as a lot of research in child development, has also taught us that interest is the primary factor for a child. A child will only learn if the child is interested in what is being offered. And therefore, whatever learning opportunities or activities are designed for children, जो भी बच्चों के लिए एक्टिविटीज सोची जाती है या प्लान करी जाती है, वो इस तरह की होनी चाहिए जिससे कि बच्चे को उसमें रुचि हो. जब तक रुचि नहीं होगी, बच्चा सीखेगा नहीं. और वो रुचि अगर होगी तो बच्चा उसकी तरफ बढ़ेगा. The child will try to reach out to that experience. That experience will wire the brain, as Professor Sanval's graph was showing. And repeated experiences of that kind will strengthen the wiring of the brain. And the entire experience in which the child will be picking up these concepts will be very much enhanced with interaction with the teacher. So the teacher interaction becomes a very important factor. Teacher interaction and peer interaction with other children as well, which enhances their learning. And therefore, all these activities, the pedagogy that we talk about, the first graph was more about what should be in the content of a preschool or a foundational learning program. The opportunities are more about pedagogy. What should the pedagogy be like? It should be very much experiential, play-based, activity-based, very relevant, contextually relevant for children. Next, please. So keeping this basis in mind, I'll go back now to the focal areas for implementation. The very first thing I think, अगर हम चाहते हैं कि जितनी भी उन्होंने 6-7 areas identify किए थे प्रोफेसर सनवाल ने, इसमें सबसे जरूरी ये है कि अभी हमारे पास एक बहुत बड़ा एक एसेट है, जो कि हम कहेंगे कि हमारे पास राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट है, जिसके तहत हर बच्चे का 6 से 11 वर्ष के बच्चे का ये एक मूल अधिकार है कि वो उसको सही तरह की शिक्षा मिलनी चाहिए. Now this education, right to education, needs to be extended to early childhood care and education also, because there are various aspects there which will flow from this. If it is included in the Right to Education Act, number one, what will be the advantages? All the states, currently a very large number of states, I think almost 23 states, have 5+ as their age of admission into class 1, whereas the Right to Education Act, as well as the whole concept of the foundational stage, is based on the concept of 6+ as the age of entry into class 1. तो अभी कहीं 5+ है, कहीं 6+ है, तो ये जो एक anomaly है, ये सही हो जाएगी, it straightened out हो जाएगी. There will be more standardization. And I think it is very important to understand that age is a very significant factor in learning in this age childhood. So 5 or 6 में बहुत अंतर होता है. इसलिए it is very important that the curriculum that is developed has to be much more age appropriate, and for that some kind of standardization is very critical. The second point is that since the age of entry to grade 1 will get standardized, इससे क्या और अंतर आएगा कि there will be also more age appropriateness in all the other stages as well. तो बहुत इस समय क्या हमारी रिसर्च पे देखा गया है कि there is a lot of underage and overage children in schools. कई बार आंगनवाड़ियों में overage बच्चे हैं और प्राइमरी स्कूलों में underage बच्चे बहुत सारे बैठते हैं और उनको उनके एज अप्रोप्रिएट एजुकेशन नहीं मिलती है. अगर ये राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट आ जाएगा और अच्छी तरह से इम्प्लीमेंट होगा, इसमें स्टैंडर्ड्स इंडिकेट करे जाएंगे, तो ये समस्याएं जो है ये काफी हद तक एड्रेस करी जा सकती है. उसके साथ ही साथ एज अप्रोप्रिएट करिकुलम और पेडागोजी करी जाएगी, जिसका कि जैसे कि प्राइमरी एजुकेशन के लिए भी और राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट में देयर इज अ प्रोविजन फॉर क्वालिटी एंड स्टैंडर्ड्स. क्वालिटी स्टैंडर्ड्स आएंगे, उससे रिलेटेड इंस्टीट्यूशनल कैपेसिटी के भी अरेंजमेंट्स आएंगे, बिकॉज देयर विल बी मोर ऑफ अ focus from the government as well to be able to ensure that the children's rights are met. And hopefully that would also lead to a more dedicated budget provision for early childhood care and education. So all these advantages I foresee could be there if early childhood care and education is included in the Right to Education Act. Next, please. Now I come to another aspect of it, which is that advocacy is very critical. So all those areas of implementation that Professor Sanwal talked about, it is very, very critical to do advocacy for what do we mean by school readiness. Already, I have heard from many sources, people are writing in newspapers also, that, by bringing early childhood into or preschool education into the school education, there is likely to be the formalization of the preschool education and much more pressure on children, academic pressure on children. Whereas the concept is the reverse. कि तो concept जो promote किया जा रहा है वो बिल्कुल उल्टा है. उसका concept ये है कि हम कह रहे हैं कि we will not only deformalize preschool education, because already what is happening is कि ज़्यादातर, especially in private schools, but even in some anganwadis and so on, there is a lot of formal teaching that is happening, which should be happening in school. And that is very detrimental for children. But what we are proposing through this national policy is the reverse, that we will not only work towards non-formalizing the preschool component, but also the primary education. Because bachcha jo hai, wo to ek continuum mein chalta hai. So there has to be consistency, and it has to be developmentally appropriate pedagogy. And therefore, it is not only about school, but it is also about what are the kind of interventions needed. So there is also an understanding that school readiness means child has to be ready. It's not only the child. The child has to be ready with certain competencies for which the child needs to have good nutrition, good health, and good learning opportunities, according to the graph that I was showing you, which brings out the priorities. But in addition to that, the child has to have a child-friendly school to enter. So the school itself has to accommodate itself to the children who are coming, and for that, it is very important to have continuity of curriculum, upward continuity rather than downward, from preschool to primary. And there has to be informed and engaged parents. अभी ज़्यादातर parents को यही clarity नहीं है कि good quality early childhood care and education क्या होनी चाहिए. तो इसके बारे में advocacy करनी बहुत ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि उस हिसाब से फिर parents अपनी choice भी बनाएंगे कि वो किस तरह के प्री स्कूल में अपने बच्चे को भेजना चाहते हैं, because every parent wants the best for their children, but then they must know what is good and what is best. Next, please. So what is required for this, as Professor Sanwal said, one is to develop a developmentally appropriate curriculum and pedagogy with upward continuity and seamlessness. So iske liye, she has already talked about the need for a framework. The policy has recommended that NCERT should come up with a framework for care and stimulation of children below 3 years, and an integrated curriculum for foundation stage 3 to 8 years. So the important thing here is that the pedagogy should be play, interaction, and experience and activity based. That should continue all the way up according to the age, adapted to the age of the children. And the assessment for children, assessment of children's learning should be informal all the way up to class 3. That is very, very important. And later also it should be a stress-free assessment. And the curriculum needs to be integrated, which takes into account all aspects of development. It should not be limited to only literacy and numeracy, but all-round development of the child. And the foundation for that comes in the early years, the first 3 years of life, or even the first 1,000 days, as Professor Sanwal talked about. And therefore, there has to be, in that framework, there has to be a lot of emphasis on interaction, sensory and physical development, and language development of the children. A lot of opportunities for children to be able to do all that, which most of the time should be with the parents and caregivers, and in some cases for creches and daycare systems as well. Whereas the second one is more geared towards the preschool component, which has been advised to be under 4 models, but linked to the school system. Next, please. So when we say developmentally appropriate content and pedagogy, what do we mean? In terms of content, it means not only literacy, but it means language and literacy, which go together. This is a new way of thinking in terms of the curriculum, that we should not be talking. The understanding is that शिक्षा के स्तर में आते ही बच्चों को लिखना पढ़ना सीखना है. लिखना पढ़ना तो तब सीखेंगे अगर उनको भाषा का अच्छा ज्ञान होगा. तो language and literacy need to be seen together, and they have to be developed together. And literacy begins not only from learning the alphabet, it begins right from getting introduced to the whole or getting attracted to a book or a storybook. So it starts from storytelling and other such activities. Cognitive and early maths. So early maths also needs to be seen in a larger frame, where we also build in the cognitive skills of children of classification, sequential thinking, etc., so that those skills as developed will help the children to negotiate the mathematics concepts much better. Creativity and aesthetic appreciation, personal, social, and emotional development, which is emerging as a very, very significant area of development of the child, and physical and motor development. तो पूरी जो foundational learning है उसका मेरे अनुसार जो content है should cover all these areas and not only language and literacy seen in a narrow sense. But all these have implications for language and for literacy and numeracy. So one has to keep that in mind as well. But that is so far as the content is concerned. For the pedagogy in a classroom, there needs to be a balance of activities, particularly group and individual activities, small group, large group activities. This is very important for children. There has to be a lot of activities like storytelling, rhymes, art and craft, free and guided activities, activities with objects and materials, a lot of music and movement, a lot of play opportunities, free play opportunities on their own, which is very critical for creativity development. So all this has to be there as part of the pedagogy for the foundational stage, which has to actually do a lot with a change of vision for a classroom. Next, please. So if we take one at a time, the first one I've already talked about actually. So the developing a framework for birth to 3 years. So there has to be, for the youngest child, there has to be much more of music, free play, interaction, care. There's no structured curriculum for this age group. There should not be. But there has to be an understanding among the caregivers and teachers. So there should be a curriculum maybe for the parents and for the teacher, for the caregivers, which should actually sensitize them to the importance of giving the children a very wholesome environment with a lot of opportunities for free action, free play, free choice, and very interactive. As the Harvard School, the Center of the Developing Child in Harvard, talks about serve and return. जैसे कि टेनिस में होता है serve and return, कि जहाँ बच्चा ने कुछ कहा उसको वापस में कुछ और हमने बोला. इससे जो ये इंटरैक्शन बच्चों की या पारस्परिक जो संबंध बनता है केयर गिवर के साथ, वो बच्चों के लिए बहुत बहुत क्रिटिकल होता है इस एज पे. And then the focus should be not only on those developmental activities, but already like a lot on nutrition, health, as well as on parenting support. So parents को किस तरह का हम support दे सकें, जिससे कि they should be enabled to be able to take care of the children in this particular way. These are very, very important, for which parents' orientations are important. There should, because many parents are working, daycare facilities need to be provided. Family support policies should be provided, such as, for example, the maternity leave or other maternal entitlements. And alongside that, there should also be, because it is very interesting that how in our own tradition, in our own cultural tradition, we have a lot of traditional songs, games, infant games, lullabies. All of these, if you analyze them, and we did this many years back, we found that each of those have been actually conceptualized, which have developmental significance. Even small infant games that we play with little babies have a lot of developmental significance for them. So those which are gradually getting extinct, they need to be revived. And those need to be then actually promoted as well, which are simple, low cost, very much a part of the culture, and bring in a lot of language content as well. Next, please. For the 3 to 8 years, I've already talked about what the curriculum should be like. The most important thing I would like to say here is that unlike what is today the practice of having a downward extension of the preschool curriculum, it needs to be upward. So one should conceptualize the curriculum for 3 to 5 year olds, 5 to 6 year olds, and then because 5 to 6 years would be the Bal Vatika, and then 6 to 8 years, which is classes 1 and 2. And this, for each of these, for example, for literacy or numeracy, or particularly since we are talking about literacy and numeracy as a major concern, there has to be a curriculum which takes the child from emergent to early learning competencies. So actually the foundation of, say, literacy starts in this year, where you, as I said, it comes in with a lot of storytelling, a lot of print awareness, a lot of phonemic awareness activities and games, and then gradually goes up into more structured school readiness activities, and then goes into the early literacy and numeracy. So it has to be a vertical upward extension of the curriculum, which has to be ensured through play, opportunities for play, activity, experience, and interaction. Next, please. So that is so far as the curriculum development is concerned. So we must, when we are developing the curriculum framework, we must keep those priorities in mind. That was the idea of that present slide. The next is teacher development and institutional capacity. I've combined the two, which is very important for professionalization of this whole area or domain of early learning and early childhood care and education, which is now being realized that because it is so important to professionalize, because we have a very scientific basis which gives us a kind of understanding of the importance of this age, and therefore we cannot just do with providing some activities, some experiences for children and hoping for the best. It has to be a planned curriculum, it has to have teachers who are actually sensitive and have understanding of child development. Then only we will be able to really do justice to this very critical age of children, which is important for not only human capital, but for all individuals, their adulthood as well. So keeping that in mind, we have to think in terms of having some robust pre-service training programs. The policy has talked about a 4 years integrated program in a kind of a medium-term framework, but immediately it has talked about online teaching, online training for the Anganwadi workers, particularly who are already in job. The point is appreciated that they are already at the job and they cannot be withdrawn from there. But it is very important to make that online meaningful experience, because it should not be something that is just kind of taken for granted, in the sense that yesterday somebody told me that, in an online, some participant told that somebody was conducting a session, and the participant told them that I am driving just now, so I've got it on and I'm listening, or I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm listening, but I can't respond to you. So it should be taken with more seriousness. There should be much more of interactive and a blended approach in the online training, and there has to be much more of hands-on experience provided, whether on individually the participants can do that, but there has to be a much more kind of a well-blended conceptualization of online training, which will really make the person more competent to be able to handle this very sensitive age group. Not only that, there has to be in-service and recurrent training, because it has been now established that one-shot training is not of any use. There has to be short recurrent training to give small bites to the teachers, so that they are able to absorb as well as try out, come back with feedback. All good practices around the world have shown that on-site mentoring and supervision is very important. And what is also research is showing that teacher training is not so important as teacher mentoring, and therefore the creation of a cadre of mentors. And here the policy is talking about this cluster resource persons who can really be developed as very good mentors for not only preschool but also the early primary. But for that it is very important that they need to be trained very thoroughly with a very robust program. So a robust program for the cluster resource coordinators will be very critical. And then there should be professional development opportunities and career mobility, because there has to be some kind of a motivation to move forward for the teachers and to perform. And therefore that, I think, should be part of our overall strategy for teacher development. And so far as institutional capacity is concerned, because this is actually talking about creating an ecosystem for very effective implementation of early childhood care and education, For that, there has to be some development of ECCE resource teams at the state district level, because one of the problems that comes up is if you talk about mentoring or you talk about follow-up or you even talk about some kind of accountability to the community, there isn't that awareness or understanding of what should happen at this stage. And this needs to come in with some kind of capacities being created for resource availability, for trainings, for mentoring, for supervision, for even for support to the Anganwadi workers or to the teachers wherever they are. The ICDS people as well as educational personnel, especially the people who are working in the BRCs, CRCs as well as the school level, need to be oriented and trained in early childhood care and education, because they are part of the system. They are supposed to oversee and provide hand-holding to the teachers for early childhood and the foundational stage, which is a different pedagogy altogether from what they are aware of or what they have been trained in. So this needs to be done. And parents and community is most critical, because demand determines supply. So if the demand is of a high quality program, then supply will automatically happen accordingly. So I think it's a very good intervention to have the parents completely educated and informed on what is good quality education and what is it that they can do to contribute to it. And most important of all, that because we are talking about 4 different models of early childhood care and education, there has to be some kind of quality standards and monitoring to standardize the quality and make it more equitable for all children. Next, please. So now we come to the regulatory system, which is another recommendation of the policy, of which Professor Sanwal had talked about. And I would say a regulatory framework and an accreditation process, I think the two need to go together, which comes in from what is known as what one would call an enforcement cum enablement model. तो एक वो जो पुराना एक system था कि हम enforcement करेंगे, हम एक regulatory system बनाएंगे जिससे कि हर एक को कुछ standards को maintain करना है, उसके लिए they will be penalized if they are not meeting those standards. The approach today internationally has changed from one of enforcement, yes, somewhere those standards are there to be enforced, but also alongside they should be enabled to be able to meet those quality standards. So अगर हम एक accreditation process बनाए इसको conceptualize करें जिसमें कि there are standards calibrated for quality, so that the preschools or schools, whoever is running those or whoever is responsible for those, are able to really have a vision. So there should be it'll help to have a common vision for quality for everybody, and they should have a kind of a roadmap. And that roadmap we should not expect them to have tomorrow. The roadmap can come over time, but then the accreditation process will take care of that. Where if they are credited according to their status, then it will be a motivation for them to improve. Parents will also know what they are opting for, and it will be overall beneficial. Because any kind of a regulatory system should need to have 3 different roles. One is quality configuration, which means creating the vision for quality. What is it that we talk about as actual good quality? So, uska conceptualization is very, very important. The second function of this system should be quality promotion. So once it has been conceptualized, it is very important to promote quality. And how do we promote quality? Not only by talking about it, but also offering a lot of support to the system in terms of trainings, in terms of resource materials, in terms of hand-holding, mentoring, as well as any other kind of finance. So all kinds of interventions can be thought about in order to enable and hand-hold the different programs to be able to reach a certain desired level of quality. And the third role is quality assessment and monitoring, which is actually the enablement role, the enforcement role, where somebody needs to go and keep on, it also needs to be more self-evaluation based or self-appraisal based, because somewhere it is important for the owners or the implementers of the program to be very much a part of that whole assessment, so that they know how to move forward and how they can improve themselves and their program. So this should be based on self-assessment, or self-evaluation, and that needs to be then again seen through a third-party evaluation. And that process then together makes for a very healthy or a very robust regulatory and accreditation process. And here, a very important thing that I would like to say, especially for early childhood care and education and for primary education as well, we all know that private schooling is really expanding, and a lot of children are moving into the public schools. And therefore, NCERT system should be a whole sector approach and not just for private preschool. Because some states have already gone for act or legislation that is confined to the private preschool, which I think is not right, because somewhere we have to improve and make our own government system also equally worthy of quality and standards, and make it worthwhile for children to stay in the schools or to come back to them. Next, please. And the last one.
Can we wrap up in 5 minutes?
Yeah, we'll do that. The last one is coordination and convergence, some challenges. So we talked about, the policy talks about the 4 models: Anganwadi model, which is exclusive Anganwadis, or Anganwadis located in the primary schools.
Every session is very good. Miss, if she wants to take more time, which I'm listening, so interesting really. So if you want to continue for 10, 15
Try to finish as early as I can, yes. Thank you. So there are 4 models: Anganwadi model, Anganwadi located in a school model, which is relocated in schools. There are preschools, which are standalone models, and preschools attached to primary schools. So these 4 models are there. So the biggest challenge is, how do we ensure equity across these 4 models? Because the contexts are very different, the situations, the communities they're catering to are very different. And then when you talk about these additional models that come up are the private and the public models. So somewhere that brings in another dimension which has to be kept in mind. Our commitment to this area is that we must have very equitable quality across models. How do we ensure that? And the challenge therefore lies a lot in coordination and convergence. Where will the challenges come from? The one challenge will come from dual management, because if you have Anganwadis, whether if they are independent Anganwadis, they need to be aligned with schools, because then only you have the foundational stage continuum. If they are in school model, then they are physically located there, but then there are different departments supervising. So how do you resolve the kind of dual management conflicts that are very inevitable in such a situation? That somewhere needs to be given a lot of significance, and some resolutions need to be thought about. In the primary school itself, or even if you're aligning it to primary school, we all know that with the Anganwadi and the primary school, there is the whole challenge of hierarchy, because you have teachers who are much better paid, who are much better qualified, maybe sometimes not even better qualified, but definitely better paid. Whereas here in Anganwadis, you have they are just honorary workers, and they have multiple functions. And so somewhere one has seen that there are issues of the kind of treatment that Anganwadi workers will get in the school. And that hierarchy somewhere needs to be addressed through training and creating a certain equitable ambience in these primary schools, training of the primary staff and so on. Then there is a lack of ECCE orientation in primary schools, so that is very important. That has to be done through training. When we talk about preschool primary linkage and continuity in the foundational stage, there are issues of physical distance. Not only dual management, but also physical distance, because very often Anganwadis, if they are moved into the primary schools, the youngest children and the other functions of the Anganwadis, because Anganwadi is actually not for preschool education, it has 5 other functions as well, which relate to nutrition, health, and community education. And therefore, how does an Anganwadi worker manage these 6 different functions and yet not compromise on the quality of preschool education? And the other is, how do the children, because some smaller children, if the school is placed not located very close to their habitation, it is likely that they will miss out on being able to get the Anganwadi experience. So somewhere these are issues need to be resolved together. Then there is the unregulated and heterogeneous private preschool sector, which is completely, you have the international level preschools and primary schools, and then you have the affordable primary schools and preschools, which they are known as affordable, which are really very needing a lot of attention. So this whole diversity needs to be addressed. How will this come together to be able to ensure equity? Lack of holistic provisions in the Anganwadi, you have a health, you have nutrition services. Those need to be ensured even in the school-based system or even in the private schools. The program for early foundational years needs to be holistic, providing and comprehensive, including health and nutrition aspects. So those have to be ensured. And infrastructure issues and inequitable access and quality across borders. It's already reflected in all these aspects. A very important issue here is that the Anganwadi worker and the teacher cannot be considered equitable, not other than the fact that in terms of qualification or training, but also in terms of the requirement from them to provide preschool education or early child or foundational learning level education, which requires a lot of intensive effort, planning and implementation on the part of Anganwadi worker, whereas she has so many other functions, not only this. And therefore, how does this get resolved? Therefore, there was a recommendation which has not been picked up in the national policy to have a second Anganwadi worker who is completely dedicated to preschool education, because then there would be some kind of a equitable quality and implementation of good quality early childhood education. Next, please. Next, please. The last is research, documentation and evaluation. I think Professor Sanwal has already talked about it. Because we are bringing in a lot of new changes, we are bringing in a lot of new ideas into this whole foundational learning, it is very, very critical to initiate some longitudinal research to be able to really generate understanding of the impact of learning on the learning process, because it is linked to the learning crisis that is there in the system. So therefore, it is very important to initiate immediately some longitudinal research, which will be able to really identify how children are moving forward and how this whole intervention is really benefiting them. Smaller scale, there's need to have action research to be able to try out and compare and contrast and identify cost-effective and high-quality strategies, which will ensure optimal learning for children. There need to be sample surveys of not only learning levels, but even school readiness, or what we call cognitive readiness of children at age 5, for which instruments are available to assess, and that is for the child readiness, but also we should look at school readiness in a much more holistic way and look at what are the family and parental awareness levels. Are they improving as a result of our interventions? What are the schools really modifying their own culture and their own physical facilities to be able to adapt to the children who are coming into the school? So are the schools ready? Are children ready? Are families ready? This is what is something that has to be done through sample surveys so that we are able to make mid-course corrections. And a lot of multidisciplinary research is required, because here we're talking about not only holistic development of the children, and also the link, as Professor Sanwal talked about, nutrition and learning, which is very closely interrelated, but we're also talking about multiple childhoods, because there are so many different contexts in which children are there, and therefore we have multiple childhoods on one hand and we have uniform expected learning outcomes on the other. How do the two interface? So that needs a lot of multidisciplinary research. There's need for evaluation of impact evaluations of investments that are made, interventions that are there, third-party evaluations. There's need for rapid assessments to address the feedback loop and be able to make mid-course corrections. I would just like to mention here, perhaps from the point of view of institutional memory, that ICDS, when it was conceptualized, if you see in 1975 onwards, had a very robust system of these rapid assessments and getting feedback from the system by engaging a lot of medical institutes, because the emphasis was on health. And it had brought out very good research in ICDS, which was over time just lost. So something like that needs to be done to have that kind of a backup of technical institutions to be able to really give feedback to the system. multi-sectoral studies need to be there to see assess the efficiency and effectiveness of interventions across sectors. And lastly, documentation of good practices is very critical, because learning from good practices, as well as whatever interventions are being planned and implemented, process-based documentation, because especially one should be piloting these interventions before we scale them up. And for the piloting, there has to be process documentation, which can help us to later scale up or sustain whatever other interventions. So those, I think, are very important. Qualitative case studies not only tell us what works, but how it works also. And therefore, the what and how is very critical. So I think I will end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Kaul, for your wonderful presentation. Professor Kaul, you very rightly mentioned that socialization is a very crucial skill which helps children to adjust better in the formal setting of the school, in addition to the academic skill. But without development of social emotional skill, learning is not possible. So development of social emotional skill and socialization is very, very important for the first foundational years. Professor Kaul, you have also mentioned about the interest-based learning activities. जो हम हमेशा कहते हैं कि बच्चे की रुचि के अनुसार उनको क्रियाकलाप दीजिए, जिससे कि बच्चा उसको enjoy भी करे और learning भी हो. So learning is possible only when the children's interest is there. And very rightly, and you have pointed out, I think all the ECE educators and the people who are working in the area of ECE want this, that the recommendation which you propose, that ECCE need to be extended in RTE, and you have also discussed the advantage. It would be very, very beneficial for all the children, and you have discussed in detail the advantages. Professor Kaul, you have touched the implications. Advocacy to be understood in its real sense and not pressurizing the child. Developmentally appropriate content and pedagogy, which is the need and requirement and right of every child. Stress-free assessment of children's play and learning. Balance of activity, which you said that it need to be given in individual, small group and large group activities such as circle time activities. Framework for birth to 3 years, that is, you also touched this point. Support to parents, that is orientation to parents in ECCE, again, it's very important. You also talked about strongly about upward extension of curriculum, that is the need of the hour, so that the children smoothly transit to class 1 and enjoy their learning. Well-blended contextualized program. You also talked about regular trainings and well-qualified teachers. And very rightly, in the end, you touched about the challenges in coordination and convergence and need of action research. And our teachers need actually the how to use this action research, because जो भी वो रोज करती हैं वो action research ही होती है, but they don't know how to put it in an organized manner. So it was actually a very, very wonderful presentation. And you also touched one point, third party evaluation of when we provide a quality ECCE program. So to assess ourselves and to also assess assessment by the third party. So these are the points you touched, Professor Kaul, and it was really nice to hear this presentation, and I'm sure that our viewers also enjoyed the presentation. And thank you so much, Professor Kaul, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you once again. Can we go to the third presentation? And I shall be presenting the third presentation. I'll be talking about ECCE perspective in NEP 2020 and what are the NCERT initiatives and prospects in ECE in past and in recent. So we are going to talk about ECCE perspective. Let me talk about the presentation. What I'm going to talk about is NCERT efforts and initiatives, past and recent efforts, policy vision of ECE in NEP 2020, structural and pedagogical shifts in NEP 2020, prospects, and suggestions for implementation plan. Now, all the previous, everyone and my previous two speakers also talked about brain research in early years. Let me give you a few examples to support the brain research in early years. I'll not go in detail like what my previous speaker has already talked about. Let me give you an example of when you are looking at this slide, you can see that how to build your baby's brain. Professor Sanbal talked about the need of good food and nutrition and good ECE in the first few years. Similarly, Professor Kaul also emphasized upon the how we need to provide stimulating activities and experiences in the first 6 years. Now, when Professor Kaul also mentioned that experiences wire the brain. Now, what do we mean by this? Connections shape the brain. What do we mean by this? Varied play opportunities are required for making connections. Now, what are these connections in the brain? When we say that more than 80%, and NEP 2020 also mentioned that more than 85% the brain develops in the first 5 years. Let me give you an example so that viewers, you can easily connect and understand. Suppose when you're talking to a telephone, when you are using your mobile, what happens? Something is happening behind, like where the telecommunication companies are working with or playing with the wires. They lay the wires first of all, so that, and then finally they connect each wire with each system. If they won't connect the wire to the system, the phone system will not work. The similar kind of a thing is happening in the brain. These are called connections. The connections are also called the sensory pathways. The more you provide sensory activities and experiences and opportunities for sensory activities, the connections or the sensory pathways in the brain become strong. Let me give you another example so that you can understand it much better. I hope everyone has seen the cricket. Cricket में क्या होता है? When the two batsmen run to make the runs, what happens? जो घास होती है उस मैदान की वो दब जाती है और वहां क्या होता है? A path is formed. एक रास्ता बन जाता है. Similar kind of a thing is happening in the child's brain during the first few years. The more you provide sensory activities, experiences, and opportunities for sensory activities, and the more often you repeat these sensory activities, the connections or the sensory pathways in the brain become strong. These connections decide. Now, when we say experiences wire the brain, when we say experiences, connections shape the brain. Yes, it is rightly said. ये connections decide करते हैं. These connections decide how the children are going to think, how the children are going to feel, how the children are going to react, and how the children are going to learn in the future. This is the reason we say that the first 6 years are the crucial years when the brain grows at a rapid rate and the connections are developing. Connections are, sensory pathways are connecting with each other. This is the reason why we say when you provide varied of play opportunities, it helps the brain to connect the wires. And as Professor Sanbal also said, food nutrition, ECCE, Professor Kaul also mentioned brain research in early years. She gave so much of a graphical examples. Now, food for the brain. Food for the brain is nutrition. First of all, nutrition and quality education, where you talk to the child. Brain needs talking, talk and talk to the child. These good food, good nutrition, interaction, talking to the child, quality, varied play opportunities is a food for the brain. Like, if I'll give one more example, if we, the brain get rid of those connections which are not used in the first 5 years. After the 5 years, the brain get rid of those connections which are not used. For example, like जैसे माली जो होता है वो समय समय पर पेड़ों को ब्रांचेस को छांटता रहता है. किस लिए? जिससे कि जो रूट्स हैं वो स्ट्रांग हो सके. Similarly, the brain also get rid of those connections which are not used or remain lazy. So, we need to be very careful कि हम किस तरह की opportunities, किस तरह के sensory experiences हम बच्चे को देते हैं. We should not provide any kind of a stress to the child. Let's see next. Why investment in the early years are very, very important. Early years investment is very, very important because it strengthens the families in their roles. They start understanding how and what to provide to their children. So first is strengthening families in their roles. There are less dropout rates if we provide quality early childhood education, not a poor quality. So if you provide a quality early childhood education, there are less dropout rates. Confident and responsible children. And today in the modern world, the big companies say that they become confident and employable adults. They grow up into a employable adults. Right time for development of skills. There are panoply of skills. So this is exactly the right time for development of skills, especially creativity, communication, critical thinking skill, problem solving skill, and children also start learning to work in team, that is collaboration. And what is the need of today market, like the job market? They want confident, talented employees who have all these skills, who have all these 21st century skills, so that they can think critically, they can create some ideas, they can come out with the new ideas, they can solve the problems in a teamwork and come out with a new solution so that it is beneficial for the company. So this is the demand for the market. So investing in the quality early childhood education is the need of the hour. Increased retention rates in the primary classes. Secure for future economic strength of the country. So as I already gave you an example, when the child completes the school education, the possibility and the chances of such children who has gone through the quality preschool education, that they complete the school education, the chances for such children to go to higher education and complete the college studies increase. And they fetch a good job for them because they are skilled and talented. So कहने का तात्पर्य ये है कि जो स्किल ओरिएंटेड और स्किल बेस्ड अर्ली एजुकेशन है वो इन शुरुआती अर्ली चाइल्डहुड एजुकेशन ईयर्स में ही होती है, because this is the time for habit formation and this is the time for development of skills. Proven strategies to produce returns. यानी कि अगर आप 1 पैसा इन्वेस्ट करते हो तो आपको 10 पैसे रिटर्न में मिलते हैं. 1 rupee, you invest 1 rupee and you'll get 10 rupees. School readiness is equal to workforce readiness. When there is an appropriate school readiness in a stress-free environment, with all these skills inculcated, then there is a workforce readiness. The workforce is ready to enter into the job market. So we cannot deny 4-5 skills, which is very, very important for today's job market, and prepare the children right from the beginning. Skilled workforce. So, होता है जॉब चीज कि टीम वर्क में काम करने के लिए तैयार होता है. We want that there has to be quality ECCE. You can also see this graph, which I have already explained to you, and this graph is an evidence. We also call is sure and smart start. So why not do a smart start with a quality ECCE? Now, what are the essential? When we say that brain research and early years talk, why to invest in quality early childhood education? What are the essentials for quality ECCE? The children cannot be happy and the children cannot learn. So the first one, we say that educate space. Professor Kaul rightly mentioned that quality infrastructure. We cannot deprive, want our children to provide activity areas, interest area. We need to provide educate space, indoor and outdoor. And in indoor, we need to design the interest areas and activity areas. Activity areas. इंटरेस्ट एरियाज यानी के बच्चों के खेल के रुचि के क्षेत्र, जहां बच्चे अपनी मर्जी से, अपनी पसंद से अपनी खेल के क्षेत्र को चुन सकते हैं और अपने मनपसंद खिलौनों से और सामग्री से खेल सकते हैं. सो दिस इज द फर्स्ट essential for quality ECCE. Developmentally appropriate pedagogy. My two speakers also emphasized on developmentally appropriate pedagogy. Play-based, activity-based and inquiry-based learning, which NEP 2020 has rightly mentioned. Developmentally appropriate pedagogy is also, when we also call it age and developmentally appropriate pedagogy. यानी कि बच्चों के विकास के अनुरूप. ये नहीं कि क्लास 1 का सिलेबस हमने बाल वाटिका में दे दिया या बाल वाटिका का जो प्ले एक्टिविटीज. Mentally appropriate means also the way the child is developing. बच्चे का फिजिकल डेवलपमेंट कैसा है, बच्चे का कॉग्निटिव डेवलपमेंट कैसा है, उसी के अनुसार टीचर अपनी पेडागोजिकल प्रैक्टिसेस प्लान करती है. मान लीजिए कि आपके क्लास में 20 बच्चे हैं, तो आप एक ही लेसन प्लान या एक ही प्रोग्राम नहीं बना सकते, अलग अलग है. तो आप हमेशा ये डेवलपमेंटल नीड के अनुसार आप उस प्रोग्राम में फेर बदल और प्रोग्राम बन जाए. और इंक्लूजन का एक cater to each child's need, interest and display. How can we ignore display? Display plays a very, very important part. Many times we ignore this part. Display has to be at the eye level of the children. Rich environment. Print approach. I want to emphasize that there should be no cursive writing when the children ears, because print जो है, बच्चा जब print देखता है, कहानी की किताबों में देखता है, न्यूज़पेपर में देखता है, आसपास के बैनर्स में देखता है, वो प्रिंट में देखता है. कंप्यूटर प्रिंट अप्रोच में देखता है. So viewers and teachers, one should not burden the child by or coax the child by like आपको cursive writing में लिखना है. पहली बात, begin exploring early attempts of writing through mark making and all these things. So we are not supposed to force the child for display. Has to be relevant for the classroom, and display needs to be print rich, literacy rich, and numeracy rich. Learning resources. Indigenous toys instead of bringing the imported and poor quality plastic toys in the classroom. It has to be indigenous toys, state specific, local specific, and the teachers need to plan what kind of a toys for each developmental domain flourish, and there could be toys for teachers. These toys and learning materials need place, not kept in the closed cupboards, because the toys are meant for the children to play. Staff. Continuous professional development. Professor Kaul also mentioned about this. Professor Sanwal also mentioned about this. Continuous professional development. Also, here I just want to add that all the teacher educators of the nursery teacher institution course who will come and teach how children learn. When we talk about essentials for quality ECCE, what are how the children learn? Children learn through listening, talking, asking questions, answering questions, imitation, repetition, fixing the puzzle, creating the puzzles, solving puzzles, analyzing the problems. Like when they are painting, they see that so they discover a new color. Oh, I made the orange. So this is what? This is exploration. When they are doing a water play, they observe and experiment what things float and what things does not float. So they start learning planning and analyzing. Even जब वो घर खेलते हैं तो वो प्लान करते हैं कि तुम मम्मी बनोगी, मैं टीचर बनूंगी, तुम पापा बनोगे. So what is this? This is planning. This is critical thinking skill. Communication is again a very, very important thing to be kept in mind, because NEP 2020 also emphasized on how. How is more important. How means pedagogy. Now when we talk about the past efforts and the recent efforts, researches, we have done the researches, training program, diploma course in early childhood care and education. We have done the national meets, conferences, academic supports to the state. Prototype ECE kit for the training purpose, awareness materials for parents and community. We also have experimental at IIT campus that runs in collaboration with NCERT. Handbooks, we have developed handbooks, instructional material for teachers, and the CHEER project, which was a wonderful work we have done, that is children's enrichment through radio, where we used to impart the activities pre and post and process through radio. This also used to conduct the toy making workshops and exhibition. Now, what the recent efforts we have done? We have developed the 2 documents, preschool curriculum and guidelines for preschool education. We have approximate 18 resource book and handbooks on early childhood care and education. We are in the process and finalization of ECE kit titled Play and Learn that has 39 play materials with a folding bag and all kept in a wheeled box. We are proud to say that we have established model preschools in RIs and all follows the play-based and activity-based approach. Then an orientation in ECE through Nishtha. Developed these two documents, preschool curriculum and guidelines. The preschool education kit that I just mentioned, Hindi and one in English, which talk. Now, the model preschools located in RIs, as I said, we are proud to say that these model preschools of NCERT and are located in RIs follow the play-based and all have activity areas. Also provide potter's clay to provide the children's connections with. Started the model preschool is that we have designed dolls area, block.
Hello, CIET, we cannot hear you.
Ma'am, we are not getting the audio.
हेलो विनीता जी, क्या आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं?
Sir, this is Akshay this side. Sir, we can hear you, but I think there is some network problem at CIET.
हाँ नहीं, लेकिन मैं कह रहा हूँ विनीता जी सुन पा रही हैं क्या? विनीता जी आप अनम्यूट करेंगी अपने को?
सर आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं? सुनीति,
मिसेस विनीता कॉल। सुनीति जी
मैं हूँ सर, आई एम ऑनलाइन।
इनकी आवाज आ नहीं रही है एक्चुअली, रोमिला जी की ना।
जी सर, मैंने आई हैव इन्फॉर्म CIT।
तो हु इज द अदर स्पीकर ऑनलाइन?
सर अब ये जो एक टीचर है, प्रैक्टिसिंग टीचर है, ही इज द नेक्स्ट वन।
तो आई थिंक वी कैन इनवाइट हिम इन द मीन टाइम इफ शी इज नॉट ऑडिबल।
जी
सेनापति जी आप सुन पा रहे हैं हमें?
यस यस यस।
वो क्या हुआ, कहाँ चली गई मैडम रोमिला जी?
स्टूडियो में कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुआ है तो
तो आप एक काम करें ना, इनको इनवाइट कर लेते हैं ना, जो टीचर हैं
टीचर्स को इनवाइट कर लेंगे।
जी प्लीज।
तो मोतीलाल कोराला जी, आप अपना प्रेजेंटेशन दे सकते हैं क्या?
Mr. Moti, Principal of Government Senior Secondary School, Kaizen, South District of Sikkim. National Youth Award in 1998-1999, and he received National Award to Teacher. His school received Green School community for the admission of their children in government school. Motilal ji, Shri मोतीलाल जी, आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं? Motilal ji, as the Sikkim is facing a lot of heavy rains, we also have his audio clipping and the presentation. So I'll request that if we run the audio clipping of Shri Motilal ji. There has a network problem in Sikkim. So let's hear the audio clipping of the principal Motilal Koirala.
हमें ऑडियो? हेलो?
Yes, you are audible.
हेलो? हेलो?
Yes, Motilal ji, you're audible.
हेलो?
I think he is there. So let's see him live.
हेलो?
He's there. Can
यस मैम। लाइट बंद हेलो?
Hello.
Hello.
Please tell me. Hello. Yes.
हेलो?
हाँ बताएं।
ऑडियो क्लिपिंग ऑडियो से
मोतीलाल जी ने बहुत संक्षिप्त में बताया कि वो किस तरह से अपना कार्य कर रहे हैं. इफ वी हैव द टाइम वी कैन शो हिज presentation हम दिखा सकते हैं, and he briefly described like what and how he is serving his school and how his school is doing wonderful work, especially by providing print rich environment. So especially his school is in rural, his school is in rural Sikkim, and if we see the presentation of his, can we show the presentation? Okay, मोतीलाल जी की presentation हम यहाँ से चला रहे हैं और मोतीलाल जी अपनी presentation के बारे में बता सकते हैं. मोतीलाल जी, आपकी presentation displayed है? मोतीलाल जी?
रोमिला जी, आई जस्ट वांट टू रिक्वेस्ट कि अब अगर प्रेजेंटेशन उनका अगर आप पे है तो आप इसको क्विकली करके और सेनापति साहब को बुला लें. तो प्रेजेंटेशन ऑलरेडी है तो आई थिंक यू कैन आल्सो शो इट.
Presentation of Motilal Koirala ji. Efforts in ECCE, what he is doing in Sikkim, in South Sikkim. If you can see that he talks about that this is dustbin free and plastic free school. Slide, and the children enjoy in a small. Has also provided the blunt furnitures to the children for the safety and comfort of the children, and his school is a very popular school and children come happily to the school. Age appropriate indoor and outdoor equipments both are there, suitable for all the. This is what you can see, that there is a print rich environment at the eye level of the children, also for the early primary grades, and it motivates the children and it also motivates the children for self learning. Walls are print rich and attractive. Print rich group, you can see that the small children are sitting in a small group and enjoying the activities, and easy for the teacher to observe and assess. So small group activities are easy for the children to observe and assess, and low display. If you can see that there is a low display, which we always say that display has to be low and at the eye level of the children. So children can look at the pictures and print that motivate and draw children's attention towards print. And they have the age appropriate and developmentally appropriate toys, and they have separate learning resource room that has been provided along with the rest time materials also. So it is very, very interesting to know that they also have rest time, and they also have a mattress for this if any child wants to take rest. By enjoying doing yoga, yes, when they are active, they are fit for learning. So teachers are provided. The small group activities help teachers to talk to the child and in the cleanest state, Sikkim. That is the very, very important thing. The school has been declared plastic-free zone and dustbin-free classrooms. When I asked Mr. Motilal कि dustbin-free classroom क्या होता है, तो he said कि एक बड़ा सा डस्टबिन है जो स्कूल के बाहर है और बच्चों को ये आदत है कि वो बाहर फेंक कर जाएं, तो क्लासरूम बिल्कुल ही मॉडल ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग, रूफ वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग as eco-friendly green park and solid waste management, installed metric attendance of staffs and students. CCTV cameras are there for the safety and security of the children, and security booth and smart classroom. Such a wonderful school he has. And so you can see the children are also teaching to other children. rooms. So here, Mr. Motilal Koirala with the lovely and the happy children of Motilal Koirala. To sum up, I just want to say that thank you to all the speakers and quality ECCE as mentioned in NEP 2020, and all children are going to benefit and transit to class 1 and class 2 when we have all these very great recommendations, and we are waiting for our children to flourish in ECE and smoothly transit from Balvatika, from preschool to Balvatika and Balvatika to class 1. Thank you so much, all the viewers and all the speakers. Thank you once again. And I warmly invite Professor Senapati, Director NCERT, to kindly address. Professor Senapati.
Thank you, madam, for your invitation. I'm very happy to be a part of this closing day function. We have completed one session during this Sikkim work. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister of Education, Minister of State, and Secretary Madam Anita Karwal and Higher Education Secretary Sri Amit Khareji. Based all these officials, I'm very happy that we are trying our best to disseminate the policy. And this is something unique. We are really grateful to our Honorable Prime Minister. When he graced the occasion, he said, this is just the beginning. And this policy will sow the seed. That means we expect a lot from this NEP 2020. A complete transformation. It will bring about a change in the entire system of education, not only in teaching learning process, not only in the classroom, but change in teacher education program, change in entire school system, and which will ultimately make our country self-reliant. What we are now propagating, Atmanirbhar Bharat. If this policy is implemented, definitely it will make our country self-sufficient. And during these deliberations, we have taken care of important areas of the policy with reference to school education. And the first session began with technology, use of technology, because we are going to use technology in a very big way. Technology will disseminate, technology will be integrated with pedagogy, and similarly we have to take care of all the children. We are highlighting on inclusive education, and that also we have taken care of during this deliberation. Similarly, we have taken care of teachers, because teachers are the heroes. Teachers are the heroes, and they have to implement the policy, and this policy has put a lot of emphasis on teachers, and we had one session on teachers, teacher education. Then the most important thing, our focus is going to be shifted from this content-based approach to competency-based approach, because we are in 21st century. We want our children to develop their problem-solving ability, communication skills, critical thinking. They should be in a position to invent. They should be in a position to discover. That is why we need a change in our approach. That also we have taken care of during this deliberation. Then the most important thing, the foundational literacy and numeracy, because policy has put a lot of emphasis on this foundational literacy and numeracy. We should understand what does it mean and how we are going to develop the foundational literacy and numeracy of our children. That is most important, because without that we cannot prepare our children, and our children cannot compete with other children. That is the need of our, and we are going to have this foundational, this literacy numeracy mission, and it will definitely bring about a change. And the one session we had on this examination and assessment reform, unless we bring about change in assessment, nothing will happen. Whatever we may recommend, if there is no change in the process of assessment, if there is no change in the our process of assessment, particularly in the external exam, then nobody will be serious. The same rote learning will continue. Our teachers will not be serious, because examination, everything depends on what type of question we are going to ask in our exam. If really we are going to test the competency, then the exam pattern will change. If exam pattern will change, then the classroom process will change, our mindset will change, and parents also will be conscious and they will take care of it. So this is very, very something very important deliberation we had on this examination reform and assessment. Similarly, we had one deliberation on this curriculum and pedagogy. That is also most important now. Everybody is waiting for the new curriculum framework, new textbook, because everybody has now a lot of expectation. We as a country, we have to grow, we have to develop, we have to contribute in nation building, and our children should be prepared accordingly. That is most important. That is why what type of curriculum we are going to develop, that everybody is watching what we are doing. And now we have already started the groundwork and for this curriculum framework. And this curriculum framework will be something unique, and we will have different type of textbook, competency based textbook, and definitely it will help in the development of skills and competency of our children. For that, we had one very good session. Then we had one session on governance, and that is also most important, governance and standard setting. That is, we are in a democratic country and we have to also take care of this. Then this session we had that quality ECCE, nutrition, and this is the most interesting one, because this is something going to put emphasis on this foundational stage. So all these we have covered, and when we have covered all these, I think we have disseminated it properly. It has been disseminated, our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and our TV channel, YouTube, and every lot of good number of viewers, and that means it is being disseminated all over the country. And now all are involved during this COVID period, and the strategy we have adopted to disseminate this policy, this is something of great importance, because we have to disseminate, we have to create awareness among the people. Our parents should know, our teachers should know, community should know what we are going to, what type of education we are going to provide to our children, and how we are going to bring about change in our school system, in our classroom, and in the mindset of the parents, in the mindset of the teachers, and in the mindset of the whole community, and even the mindset of all of us, because we all are also responsible, because we have to join hands. And the Honorable Prime Minister on that day highlighted, this is not the policy of the government of India, this is the national policy, that it indicates something that we have to take into confidence and take everybody with us, and that is most important, because then only we can implement. Because if we go back to ancient Indian education system, in the Gurukul system, that means the community was playing a very important role in education. If our community will come forward and every member of the community will participate, parents will take interest, and the teachers will take interest, we all will take interest,
definitely we can implement this policy, and this policy will bring about a significant change. Because what reform the policy has suggested, reform particularly, it is not the much physical change, because just we are going to add this preschool with this class 1 and 2, but the reform what the policy has suggested in the curriculum, reform in pedagogy, reform in assessment, reform in use of technology, that is going to bring about change. Because we have to see from a holistic point of view what we are doing, and how what we are teaching, why we are talking this multidisciplinary approach, why this there will be no hard separation, no boundary. That we have to understand, because we want to develop the competencies, we want to develop the skills. When you say competency and skill, all these are interrelated, integrated, and that should not, that is why that should not be hard separation. And our students should learn from a holistic perspective, all their potentialities should develop. So from that point of view, this policy is going to bring about a significant change in our education system, and we are going to prepare our children in a different way. Let our children think, let our children critically analyze the situation, let our children observe the situation, let our children draw some hypothesis from that situation, and our job is to provide a very conducive learning environment to our children. Can we develop that system? Can we create that environment inside the classroom? And that this policy expects. That is something different. That is why we say this is something unique, and this will bring about a paradigm shift. And that is why our Honorable Prime Minister is taking a lot of interest for the implementation of this policy. Now policy is ready, and how this policy is going to be implemented, that is the concern, and it is in the hands of teachers. Because we have to respect our teachers, we have to trust our teachers, and only our teachers can bring about change. That 100% sure, because now this policy has given a lot of importance to our teachers, and this policy has recommended that teachers can use their own pedagogy. That means a lot of autonomy to teacher to implement this policy, to bring about change. Teachers can use their own pedagogy, and a lot of emphasis on multilingualism. Our children can learn through their mother tongue. That is most, they can learn, they can understand their culture, they can understand the local history, local geography, local flavor we are going to add to the textbook. So from that point of view, if you see this is going to bring about a significant change, because if our children are connected to their root, they know their root, and they know their culture, they know their tradition, they know their value system, then definitely they can understand everything. And they will interact when they will grow up, and they will learn about the national history, national geography, and also then the international things. So they ultimately, we are preparing our children for global citizenship, taking into account their root, taking into account the traditional knowledge, and also Indian philosophy. So from that point of view, this policy is very, very important, and we have tried our best to disseminate this policy, because to develop this national curriculum framework, we have to we will have many deliberation just to take the opinion of the people. I think now our teachers and the parents and other stakeholders, so they know about the policy and what we expect from this policy and how we are going to implement this policy. I think this deliberation have created a lot of awareness among different stakeholders. So from that point of view, we have done our job, and all these deliberations have been very effective, very productive. We have got a lot of feedback from through social media, and many likes, appreciations, and all the sessions have become very fruitful. And really, Ministry of Education has taken a very innovative initiative, because it's something new. Because earlier we were not doing like this, and we have started with the Teachers' Day. The significance, you will see how much importance this country is giving to our teachers, and this will continue that from 5th of October, 5th September to 25th September, because all these days we are busy in this Teacher Fest. This is a festival all of us have enjoyed, and we have celebrated in a different way from the academic point of view, and we have participated, we have shared our views, and we have invited teachers practitioner teachers of now national awarded teachers to this teacher fest. So they have taken the lead and they have presented their view, their experiences, the good works, the best practices they have shared. Because that is something important that all the teachers should know. If we do good work, definitely we can bring about change. That is the indication. So I'm very happy that we all have joined our hands together, and starting from our Honorable Prime Minister, our Minister of Education, Minister of State, and our Secretary of Higher Education and Secretary of School Education. I particularly Madam Anita Karwalji, she has taken a lot of interest. I know how much interest she has taken, because of many times we have discussed, and this shows that we are really going to do something to improve the quality of education. If we cannot improve the quality, if we cannot provide high quality education to our children, then we cannot grow, we cannot make our country a developed country, we cannot take our country to a new height. And what Honorable Prime Minister is repeating, that Atmanirbhar Bharat, and this policy, definitely this policy will make our country Atmanirbhar, and we can bring about a change. And I am really grateful to the whole ministry and all the officers and my colleagues, and Professor Anupam Ahuja is sitting with me, and she is the overall coordinator from NCERT, coordinating this program from beginning to end, and all my colleagues who have taken part and presented, and all the teachers who have presented, and all others who have presented in this deliberation, participated in this deliberation. And I also congratulate all the viewers, because it is successful because of you have viewed this program very seriously, given your feedback, we have also noted down, and really it is a very effective, very interesting, and we all have enjoyed. And in future also, definitely will take it forward with the support and collaboration of all the teachers and all the community members, parents, and everybody, because now I know whole country is watching this, and we are going to involve everybody. We are going to take the opinion of everybody, suggestion of everybody for our national curriculum framework and for our textbook, because that is the main thing, how we are going to develop national curriculum framework. 4 national curriculum framework we are going to develop, and based on the framework we'll develop textbook, we'll take care of everything, and suggestion, all the suggestion and feedback, and definitely I'm very optimistic we'll come out with a good national curriculum framework and good textbooks, which will really help our children to become good citizens and good human beings, and so they can contribute significantly in nation building. That is our expectation, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and a special thanks to our Joint Secretary, Mr. Bipin Kumar, because he has taken a lot of initiative, and I request him to deliver his view, and he has, because of his sincere effort, now we have been able to complete this teacher fest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senapati ji. It was very enlightening to hear you and the concluding session. So, as you said already, that the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister in this new education policy, I think it is the pillar, as you rightly said, for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And we are going to conclude this 20 days Shikshak for today. And in field, I have worked as district magistrate and different positions, so I just was trying to implement the policies which are framed at national level. But this is my first exposure to be involved with the policy, and now I realize that how the policy can change the things at the ground level. But really, in last 20 days, the different themes of the education policies, they have been covered in such a explanatory way, and we have this documentation also on our website, so that if somebody has missed, so it's available in the form of infographics also, the webcast also, and miss the efforts which NCERT has put in last 20 days, and Anupma ji and all other faculties of NCERT or KV or other institutes also associated with the Ministry of School. So, and the teachers also, the experts, the educationists. So, it's a big achievement, and especially I just would like to thank my secretary also, because when she asked me to plan this event for 20 days. So I was not sure that how we'll plan it, but it concluded very well today. And she is so nice, and she is having such patience that sometimes we were doing better. Means we were not performing as per the expectation. There was some disturbance also in the network, but it went so smooth because of her support and her proper guidance only. So just today, and I think this is the beginning only, this is not the end. And the feedback, the participation of different stakeholders, we know already that more than 15 lakhs feedbacks have been received on this new education policy across the country. And the quiz also is going on, and I think 1.5 lakhs participants have taken the quiz, which is also going to be closed today. So it's a really good initiative under the guidance, the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. And again, I just would like to thank everybody, and special thanks to the Secretary of School Education, Anita Karwal ma'am, for showing her faith in us as a team, and for her guidance every day in all the events. Thank you. Thank you, Senapati ji, to your whole team and all other team members, the teachers, the parents, the viewers, and other team members, NIC also especially. NIC also has done very good work for 20 days continuously. So thanks and best wishes to everybody. Thank you.